What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sitdown. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button and let me know what you think of today's very interesting discussion in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or you're living under a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another sit-down video on this channel. My goal over the last 4 years has been to tell the stories of people that have been connected and in the mafia. We've done a good job of that, and I always like to tell you about people you may not have heard of. Obviously, we've all heard of John Gotti, but there's so many unknown people that were connected and friends to the Dapper Don, men who reported to him on a daily basis in the 80s and early 90s. We're going to talk about a group of brothers today that were reporting to John Gotti and very respected by him. The story of John and Joseph Giordano next on the sit down. When we talk about the Giordanos, we will start with John Giordano, aka Handsome Jack. John Giordano was born in 1941 in New York City. It was said that the Giordanos grew up in and around the East Village. Now, Joseph Giordano is the little brother of John Giordano. He would be born in May of 1949. Now, the Giordanos, their uncle was longtime Gambino member Joseph Joe Piney Armone. And the Giordanos grew up hanging around a pastry shop called Di Roberta's, which was in the East Village, 176 First Avenue, not far from East 11th Street in the East Village. Now, if you know anything about the early Gambino family in Manhattan, one of the longtime captains was a person called Olympia Garofalo. Garofalo operated out of the Di Roberta's pastry shop. And I believe today, 176 First Avenue is actually now a some sort of sandwich spot, I believe. And a lot of the early Manhattan Gambino people, most notably people like Jackie D'Amico, he would come up under Olympia Garofalo. And Garofalo was a captain until his death in the 80s. Now, John Giordano, it was said, was active in gambling, loan sharking, and extortion. He would be made into the Gambino crime family in the late 70s, sponsored by his uncle, Joe Piney Armone. Joseph Giordano would also become a member of the Gambino crime family in his 30s in the late 70s. And one thing about John Giordano that we would come to find out, once John Gotti took over in the mid-80s, Piney Armone was obviously elevated to the hierarchy of the Gambino crime family. John Giordano was named a captain under John Gotti. Here they can be seen leaving the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club in Ozone Park, Queens. Now, one interesting thing that I learned about John Giordano is during the involvement of Anthony Casso and attempting to find out who shot him in the 80s, John Giordano's name would come up in that. According to Anthony Casso, after Jimmy Heidel gave up the names of who gave him the instructions to shoot at Casso in the 80s, Casso would claim that he would summon two members of the Gambino crime family to that basement where Heidel was being held. According to Casso, he would state that Vic Amuso would bring Gambino mobsters Jackie Giordano, aka Handsome Jack, and Joe Butch Correo to the basement to let them know what was going on. He would say that he would tell Giordano that essentially what had happened. Before the Gambino mobsters left, they told Casso they were satisfied with Heidel's response, and they would inform John Gotti that Heidel had fingered Michael Paradiso in being the person who gave him the order. Casso would advise that he believed that Correo and Giordano understood Heidel would then be whacked when Casso finished with him. As soon as the Gambino people left, Amuso and Casso re-entered the basement, and Casso took out a .22 automatic pistol with a silencer and repeatedly shot Heidel multiple times, which will come from FBI agents as well. So John Giordano was essentially the eyes and ears in all this and took the instructions back to what exactly Heidel said while being tortured in that basement by Lucchese lunatic Anthony Casso after he was shot at in the 80s. Now, uh, John Giordano would have to deal with the law in his own right. In 1991, he and 7 associates were indicted by the federal government in a wide-ranging indictment involving loan sharking, gambling, and extortion. Now, he was also, John Giordano, charged with his involvement in the 1989 whacking of a person called Robert Weiler, who was said to be someone who sold narcotics in Staten Island. At the time, John Giordano lived in Staten Island. Now, while out on bail in 1995, down the road, Giordano was convicted of all this and was given a prison sentence, a long prison sentence. While out on bail, John Giordano was seeing a friend in the area of the Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City. Now, someone obviously knew that John Giordano was coming out of the facility at that point. A car would pull up, and Giordano was shot multiple times in his back. It was said that his spinal cord was severed. John Giordano lived the rest of his life paralyzed from the neck down and confined to a wheelchair. Now, you may be asking, who would shoot at a high-ranking member of the Gambino crime family? Now, multiple motives were given in this case that maybe it was some sort of power struggle inside the Gambino crime family. Obviously, he was loyal to John Gotti, but by 1995, he was off the street, and the people in control of the family were connected to John Gotti. Obviously, his son was in control, so that didn't seem to have any wings to it. It was later thought of, though, that John Giordano was shaking people down in the area of the Upper East Side, and he may have angered people. Eventually, a person called Ernesto Rodriguez was arrested for this crime. He would flee to Puerto Rico and then be arrested again down the road. Now, it was said that there was a bounty put out on Ernesto Rodriguez, but like many others in the Gambino crime family, no one ever got to them. This is one major issue that John Gotti Jr. had as the boss of the Gambino crime family. Very little retribution was taken on behalf of multiple things, including the shooting of John Giordano, the assassination of Bobby Borrello. A lot of things never were shaken out, and the Gambino family never got really any retribution for any of it. John Giordano would die in 2009. Now, he was identified in 2002 by Mikey Scars DiLeonardo as an active captain in the family, though down the road, he was replaced on an acting basis by his brother, Joseph Giordano. Now, Joe Giordano was about 8 years younger than his brother, and he would have an active mob career as well. It was said that he was very involved with sports betting in his career, and he held sway over a crew of soldiers based out of Long Island. It was said Joe Giordano lived in the area of Deer Park on Long Island. One of the people in his crew was famed Gambino music producer and record executive Joseph Iskro. Here he can be seen with Kim Kardashian. Joe Iskro was very connected, and it was said he was very connected at one point, Joe Iskro, with Joe Piney, in fact, calling him Uncle Joe. Iskro was under Joe Piney, then down the road, the Giordanos. Now, one thing also that Joseph Giordano was very involved with was the world of extortion. This is one thing that a lot of people say is gone in the mob today, but that's actually not entirely true. There are still various places that are either connected to the mafia, run by the mafia, have people and families run by the mafia. So let's say a pizzeria owned by someone's son that might be mobbed up. A lot of these places can still be extorted. Now, according to what we know, in 2009, Joseph Giordano was hit on extortion charges relating to an incident involving his nephew. According to what we know, Joe Giordano was approached by his nephew in a dispute with a construction company owner over work done on his home. According to the state of New York, Giordano allegedly approached a man, threatened, beat, and kicked him demanding $50,000. He would be indicted on extortion charges. Now, outside of court, Joe Giordano claimed he was being targeted due to the fact that he was Italian and a member of the mafia, and that he wasn't a member of the mafia. It was just a witch hunt, essentially, and they painted him out to be this awful person. In the end, Giordano was hit with a 1 to 3 year prison sentence, and his son would state stoically that he was, suffering from lung cancer. He was coughing up blood, and that, basically they hit him with a pretty tough sentence, even knowing that he was sick and likely wouldn't survive. At Adirondack Correctional Facility in New York on September 29th, 2013, Joe Giordano succumbed to lung cancer. He was 64 years old. Now, sadly, this story does not totally end. Generally, when something happens involving the family of mobsters, I'm not one to bring it up, though I did want to use it as maybe a way to bring some awareness. And if we can help just one person, that's the goal. Sadly, in 2016, the 18-year-old granddaughter of Joseph Giordano was brutally stabbed to death in a Nashville, Tennessee hotel. It was said that she began a relationship, Sonny Giordano, with a person called Benjamin Bolton. Now, from all I know about Benjamin Bolton, he is a complete scumbag. It was said that at one point he was engaging in pimping people out, a real lowlife, to be quite honest. And according to the family of Sonny Giordano, they would state that they had no idea she was in a relationship with Mr. Bolton. It was also said that this relationship was a very abusive one. Sonny Giordano was found dead in that apartment in summer of 2016. Her father would state, when it comes to understanding the value of being a woman, know your worth, he said. Know that you have to focus on yourself before any man. Graduate high school, become something, go to college, get your degree, start your own business. Don't worry about being validated by another person. He would say that, quote, also, I'm just trying to make a tragic situation for me and my family positive for someone else. Anthony Giordano would begin the Sunny Days Foundation, an organization to help spread awareness to domestic violence and offer outlets to victims. They would eventually sell T-shirts and bracelets, and proceeds would go to the YWCA Women's Shelter, and it would become a nonprofit. According to what I know, Benjamin Bolton is still being held by the Tennessee Department of Corrections, though I don't know that a court case has come out with this. He is being held, though there is no end date to his sentence at this point. I do want to end this with, if you are struggling with domestic violence, you're not alone. So many women and really men in general deal with domestic violence. If you are a victim of it, please go and get help with it. Don't live in fear any longer. Rest in peace to Sonny Giordano. That's the show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you find yourself willing, please donate to any domestic violence chapters in your area. There's so many women that are suffering from this, and no one ever really ever knows because they're so scared to go to people to get help. If you know someone that's suffering from it, please try to help them in any way you can. We'll see you next week here on the Sit Down.